So at this time, I'm going to ask Joanna Seddon to come forward, please, as we'd like to do a remembrance for Tony Pace.
I was thinking when you were hearing about the financial value of brands and the ISO in particular, which was something that Tony was very, very passionate about, that he coined a wonderful phrase which we have to make the ISO and the financial value of brands work live up to. He said, the ISO standards are the golden ticket for marketers. You know, we are trying to carry on what Tony began, take it further, and, you know, I remember when he awarded me the Blair Award when I got that, how he was absolutely determined. And it was difficult because of COVID, that I would get bottles of champagne. Tony was an aficionado of good champagne. And I remember he finally succeeded when we met in person. So Tony was, you know, a person that I think everybody liked. He was a brilliant marketer, and he was a wonderful person. He was dedicated to MASB. He has done many things, and I will let others talk more about who know him better than me and his accomplishments. I know him really primarily since he became involved in MASB, so only a few years. But he has done, you know, much for marketing. Just a little bit of background. He was passionate about sports, right? As one of the reasons that you know, he was also very passionate about the sponsorship, because a lot of sponsorship is about sports. So as you can see here, he started reading a newspaper while in elementary school, so he could look at sports pages, scores, and statistics, always from a statistical angle. He was a sports journalist, did finance. So he's like left brain and right brain, perfect for, you know, linking, being the interface with MASB between marketing and finance. He started as a journalist, focused on sports, and then he did an MBA in finance, and then he went to advertising. So, you know, Tony was like your all-round man. And here you can see some of his, on the right, you can see some of his many things that he wrote. And Tony was well known, both on the creative agency side. He was one of the founders of Momentum, together with Chris Weil, which I remember well from my days at Future Brand, how they would appear on segways before segways had been invented at events and wow people with them. So he was cool, right? He not only cared about metrics, but he was cool. But he also became a very esteemed CMO. So he's been on all sides. He knew all of marketing, and you know, we all miss him, you know, deeply. This is just some of his accomplishments at Subway. He grew the brand to be number 2 in market share in the US and number 1 in locations worldwide, far more than McDonald's. And brand value, of course, he tracked the brand value. So he rose from unranked to $22 billion. So he literally did his, you know, personal achievements and best to really create value from marketing and brand. And Tony cared. You know, he cared. His you know, a wonderful tribute about from Tuck, Justin Tuck, about him. Tony cared about the business and the people in it. Years after I worked for Subway, I was still calling him for advice. He always responded like he was my paid consultant. And, it wasn't about him. He didn't, ran MASB for love. He did it all for love. He's somebody that we can all, learn a lot from, remember with deep fondness and emulate. He cared about society. He was very active in not-for-profit organizations. He was treasurer of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, worked for the American Heart Association. I mean, Tony was everywhere. He did not stop for a minute. And when he became president and CEO of MASB, he created a lot of the successful thought leadership initiatives. And he didn't just create, he inspired others to create, which is much more important. So the Sponsorship Accountability Metrics Project, working with the ANA, which you've seen, what a stellar piece of work this has been now carried on by Karen. He was also very, very active in the financial value of brands imperative and the golden ticket of ISO, which he was very passionate about. So multiple accomplishments. He was everywhere. And this is what he said about marketing accountability. If there is good marketing accountability, economic growth on a macro level will be greater. A lot more needs to be done to make sure that money goes to the things that marketers know will drive their individual enterprise and the economy as a whole. That's the reason we're doing this. So you can see that the ideas that we're now putting forward from the brand, elevating marketing by making marketing accountable, it was there, all, from Tony, Meg, and And we have, our remembrance of Tony and all the marketing industry's tributes. As you can see from all these tributes from Tony's career, it's not just MASB who remembers Tony with, with great fondness and admiration. It's the industry as a whole. He was respected, and loved. So thank you very much. We will have a drink and toast to Tony at dinner. I hope you'll all participate in that. Because he would like to be, we haven't got the best champagne for him, but we will have a token, yeah.
Yes, and if anyone wants to come forward and share any stories about Tony, you're perfectly welcome to. In fact, I will start off on that side. So Tony became a very dear friend. And as a dear friend, we often have many, many discussions. And the one thing I'll say about Tony was that he was the individual that had the greatest variety of knowledge of anyone I've ever met. He could talk about any topic. We could talk about high energy particle physics. One day it would be the football game. The next day he could speak on every individual topic. And he became, what was really interesting is when COVID first hit, is that I feel that Tony was like one of the major industry figures on COVID, because literally everyone was calling up Tony and asking him, what his perspective, what they should do as an organization, both from a marketing perspective, but even so from an individual perspective, because he was so just tied into it, and people always had that confidence that regardless of what the conversation was, you will get an educated and a very thoughtful response. And so that's why I remember Tony the most about is just how varied his knowledge was. So thank you, Tony.
Can we ask Ray to come in?
Yes, we have Ray here, Ray Katz. And Ray is, besides being a dear, dear friend of Tony, is actually representing the family here today. So.
Thank you, Frank. I'm so honored to be here to represent the Pace family and to express my thoughts and feelings about one of the most incredible marketing executives, but more important, one of the most amazing human beings colleagues, and friends who has ever lived on this planet. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and in my immediate family, I was the first to graduate from a four-year college and to have a graduate degree, both from the University of Pennsylvania, Wharton School, where I followed in Tony's footsteps and coincidentally had the same majors. Because I did not have family role models and mentors who had traveled the path on which I was embarking, let alone an iconic advertising agency like Young and Rubicam, Tony was more than my first boss at Young and Rubicam. He was a mentor, somewhat of a big brother, a role in which he also excelled. Ask all of his younger siblings. And ultimately a friend, client, and colleague. As Tony's brother, Dan Pace, best put it, quote, "You guys were always on the same page in how you viewed people, marketing challenges, business, and sports." Tony truly taught me how to think as an authentic marketer, did not over-target. So his customer base for Subway was anyone with a wallet and a mouth, which I loved, because the agency had to try to pin him down to adults 18 to 54 or something like that. So he taught me how to dress. He taught me how to present. He taught me how to interact with clients. Although, as I often do, I overdid it, complimenting a not-so-attractive client on her new hairstyle, causing him to literally fall off his desk chair so that she could not see him laughing. I was blessed to share both joyous and somber life events with Tony throughout the years, as well as multiple business relationships. On the business side, Tony was always a brilliant and tough but fair negotiator. From working with him on the Tang account at Young and Rubicam, some of you may remember that product, to helping him build a momentum business plan when he was at McCann Erickson, to collaborating with him when he was at the NFL, and I worked at the NFL when he ran the Coke business and created Monsters of the Gridiron, to selling Subway the World Baseball Classic sponsorship. I learned and grew from every minute working and interacting with Tony. And he gave me the opportunity to be part of this tremendous organization and this terrific group at MASB, so I appreciate that very much. On the personal side, Tony was the one who tackled an opposing advertising league softball player who was ready to blindside me after I took out the catcher, scoring from second base on a ground ball to get Young and Rubicam into the Ad League playoffs. Tony and I ordered in an amazing dinner when Duke played Louisville in the 1986 NCAA Finals, with the winner winning the Young and Rubicam pool and therefore paying for that dinner. Tony quickly turned from a competitor to a coach the first time I broke 80 on the golf course at an NFL client event at the Equinox Resort event in Vermont. Conversely, I was the one to whom Tony recounted his son Leo's hockey goals, and for that matter, extremely detailed statistics, or the amazing achievements of his daughter Liz. Tony worked at what he loved. He worked really hard every day on being a marketing executive, a friend, a dad, a husband, and a big brother. That's incredibly simple, but it's true. He was the opposite of absent-minded. He was always present, extremely present. He managed to always change with the times without favoring trends or gimmicks. Tony always thought outside the box, and in fact, also created his own box. He was willing to be a little misunderstood. He was not universally always understood or always loved, but he was universally always respected. Tony was humble, and he relished being a lifelong learner. With his children, with his wife, with all of us, in business and in his personal life, Tony always had a lot of fun. He treasured happiness, hard work, loyalty, intelligence, and love. He will be missed, but at the same time will always be a part of all of us for our remaining years. And at the end of the day, isn't that what a successful life is all about? Thank you.
I had a very interesting relationship with Tony in terms of just the mutual respect that Tony relayed. And I take a look at his work with the ANA, and I take a look at his very strong opinions on a number of things. which he used to be able to call out differences. And occasionally he would call and he really wanted a different perspective. He wasn't looking for verification of what he was thinking, which all too often we're caught in the trap of. And he appreciated the difference in perspective. And he was always very respectful of that, and it could come from anybody. He truly listened. And I think that's what made Tony so valuable to MASB and to the world, in terms of the respect, Ray, that you referenced that he just had in that broader audience. And he will be sorely missed because that's a trait not many have.
Well, I only knew Tony through MASB, but I'm well aware that when he was on campus here at Notre Dame, he was a big man on campus. We all recognize he was truly a Renaissance man and a polymath. I would guess the dictionary entries in the general dictionary for Renaissance man and polymath probably have Tony's image next to the entry. Maybe we should do something like that for the marketing language dictionary. Not only MASB, but the world is diminished by that great man's loss. And all of us will have to pick up our games for MASB as a result. And I just feel lucky to have known Tony.